A woman joins a golf club. When she hears the guys talking about their golf round, she says, "I played on my college's golf team. I was pretty good. Mind if I join you next week?" No one wants to say yes, but they're on the spot. Finally, one man says, "Okay, but we start at 6:30 a.m. He figures the early tea time will discourage her. The woman says this may be a problem and asks if she can be up to 15 minutes late. They roll their eyes, but say, "Okay." She's there at 6:30 a.m. sharp and beats all of them with an eye-opening 2-under-par round. She's fun and pleasant, and the guys are impressed. They congratulate her and invite her back the next week. She smiles and says, "I'll be there at 6:30 or 6:45. The next week, she again shows up at 6:30 sharp. Only this time, she plays left-handed. The three guys are incredulous as she still beats them with an even par round despite playing with her offhand. They're totally amazed. They can't figure her out. She's very pleasant and a gracious winner. They invite her back again, but each man harbors a burning desire to beat her. The third week, she's 15 minutes late, which irritates the guys. This week she plays right-handed and narrowly beats all three of them. The men grumble that her late arrival is petty gamesmanship on her part. However, she's so charming and complimentary of their strong play, they can't hold a grudge. This woman is a riddle no one can figure out. They have a couple of beers in the clubhouse, and finally, one of the men asks her, "How do you decide if you're going to golf right-handed or left-handed?" The lady blushes and grins. "When my dad taught me to play golf, I learned I was ambidextrous," she replies. "I like to switch back and forth. When I got married after college, I discovered my husband always sleeps in the nude. From then on, I developed a silly habit. Right before I leave in the morning for golf practice, I pull the covers off him. If his willy points to the right, I golf right-handed. If it points to the left, I golf left-handed." The guys think this is hysterical. Astonished at this bizarre information, one of the guys says cheekily, "What if it's pointing straight up?" She says, "Then I'm 15 minutes late." When I was in college, I met this girl who was from Michigan, and we became so intimately close, but in a friendly, platonic kind of way. I was from Florida, so I knew nothing about cold weather. As the weather started to get colder, she took me out shopping and picked out clothes for me. We became closer and closer. Of course, always treating each other as friends, but everybody could see that we felt a lot more for each other. Everyone in our dorm would talk about it when we weren't around. Will they or won't they? The connection between us was so strong that we could finish each other's sentences. And sometimes we didn't even need to exchange a word. We just knew what each other was thinking. Unfortunately, the one thing we couldn't communicate about was the feelings we had for each other. Then after the semester was almost over, she was talking about how beautiful the winter was up in Michigan. I was still struggling to deal with the colder weather, and driving all the way up to Michigan meant things getting even colder, but I didn't care, because I knew the cold would mean chances for us to get closer. So instead of me going home for winter break, we decided I would drive her home to Michigan. There wasn't any snow on the roads yet, but after a few hours, it was getting noticeably colder outside, and the only vent that seemed to work in my car was in the very middle. So we both keep putting our hands in the middle of the car, and our hands kept touching by accident. At this point, she hadn't said a word to me of her intentions, even though it was so painfully obvious, when looking back, how much she wanted me and how much I wanted her. But neither of us had the courage to just come out and say it. Finally, as we crossed the border and into Michigan, and I was starting to get some cramps from sitting so long, I adjusted my position, and my right arm just sort of fell across her thigh. I could feel her trembling at the touch, but I thought at first it was just from the cold. My mind is racing as I was thinking, "Oh my God, I'm actually touching her leg. Is she going to freak out? What is she going to say? Am I ruining our friendship?" But she didn't say a word. I was so terrified that the moment may end. When she realized where my hand was, I stayed completely motionless. As we passed Detroit and were getting close to her hometown, she started shifting around in her seat, and it caused my hand to slide up her thigh. I remember my heart pounding, wondering how she was going to react, but she just seemed like she was sleeping. Finally, as we neared her exit, she just sort of leaned over on my shoulder. With that, my hand slid even higher up her thigh. My entire arm was trembling, and I could feel her warmth. Then she whispered in my ear, "You know, you can keep going further if you want." So I drove to Canada. A gambler dies and goes to heaven. A professional gambler wins big and dies of an aneurysm. When he gets to the afterlife, he finds himself at the back of a miles-long line to get into heaven. Drawing on his experience, the gambler immediately thinks of a way to get ahead of everyone else. He taps the old man ahead of him on the shoulder. "Want to make a bet while we wait?" the gambler asks. "If I can guess your last words in 3 tries, you have to let me cut ahead of you." The old man, having nothing better to do, agrees. Immediately, the gambler begins reading him like the pro player he is. He notices the elderly Asian man's shirt is open, exposing a pair of defibrillator marks. "Don't be silly, it's just indigestion," the gambler remarks. The old man looks a bit surprised, then steps aside, giving up his place in line. Next, the gambler taps on a redneck's shoulder. He makes the same bet, and the redneck also accepts. "This one's easy," the gambler smirks, sizing up the bruised, bloody, grass-stained redneck with the caved-in skull. "Hold my beer." Muttering profanities, the redneck begrudgingly steps aside and gives up his place in line. Riding the high of a hot streak, the gambler wastes no time, tapping the next man ahead of him on the shoulder. He quickly makes the same bet and is ecstatic when the agreement is made. Okay, let's see. The gambler studies the new mark carefully. He's a large, imposing black man, riddled with several bullet holes. The gambler holds his hand out like a gun. "You ain't taking me alive?" The man shakes his head. "Wrong." The gambler strokes his chin. The guy is giving him nothing else to work with. The gambler holds the gun sideways, makes a mean face, and shouts, "Fuck the police!" Wrong again. The gambler's getting frustrated now. He's never been unable to read someone before. Finally, the gambler throws his hands in the air. "I've got nothing," he shouts. "I give up." The man steps aside. My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.